I've decided to keep a journal.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Paul Schrader, where we watch every film written and or directed by American filmmaker Paul Schrader and explore how they speak to their moment. And this one, it's the episode you've all been waiting for.
That's right. You didn't realize there was an underseen classic that awaited you, a Schrader gem.
I found a website calling it that.
Whoa.
All right, the show is hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Cerone.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan. Welcome to the Coven.
Yeah, welcome to the Craft.
Yeah.
That's a good movie. I like that movie. We'll get to that in a second, actually.
Yep.
It's almost relevant to the show. Now, eagle-eared listeners may recall that on some episode, I can't remember which one it was, I talked about my desire to locate the limited edition flavor, Sprite Chill, in zero sugar format.
We're looking at it.
And look what we have here, Sprite Zero Chill.
Yep. And announcing a sponsorship deal for the podcast. They've agreed to give us $9
Absolutely.
and we'll talk about them every day.
You don't need to have experienced major trauma to benefit from Sprite Zero Chill. And
it's good for everybody. The best version of you.
Yes. And it's also stamps.com.
Yep.
It's okay.
Okay.
It tastes like somebody left a gusher in some Sprite.
Oh.
But like the bubbles are still there. What? What's up?
Sorry. No, I'm just enjoying. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this childhood little gimmick that you can do of putting a gusher in a soda to sort of soup up the flavor. But I love the idea that it's like the origin
soup, though.
The origins. Right. But it's like the same thing as penicillin. You're saying like somebody accidentally left a gusher in a Sprite. That's
it's
really
like
cool.
It's seen in every music biopic where they're like, "Wait a second, what did you just sing?"
Yeah, play that again.
Do you remember the thing that our fellow degenerates would do in college, where they would put a bunch of jelly beans into a bottle of vodka?
Alcohol. Yep.
Yes. So you'd have jelly bean.
Mm-hmm.
Vodka that also had a disgusting mass of now colorless like gum arabic at the bottom of the.
To steal your joke, that's the SCOBY. That's the
yeah exactly. That's the mother. That's the Bragg's bottle. They're advertising themselves as having the jelly beans at the bottom. We'll bring our guest in here in just a minute, but joining us once again from our Last Temptation of Christ episode, we have a special thematic pop-in here.
Oh, yeah.
To tell us about a special offer.
If you'd like to support the show, you can subscribe to our Patreon, where for $5 a month, you'll get a bonus episode every other week, covering Clint Eastwood movies from before Play Misty For Me and all kinds of Clint ephemera. It helps us keep this feed free, so please consider supporting us at patreon.com/podcasty4me.
That was the devil. I do need to apologize.
That was you when you had that sour eye, right?
Yeah, it was me when I had that sour eye. And then I put the sour eye in a bottle of Prestige vodka.
Yeah.
Already doing callbacks, 5 minutes in. How does he do it, folks? I want to apologize to any witches, pagans, practitioners out there.
The thing that they all hate.
Yeah, because they're not actually, they don't care about the devil. The devil is Christianity. They're outside of this.
Yep.
They're not consorting with the devil at all.
No, the devil is new to them and fake. The devil is like Mormonism, basically, for witches.
Right, new and fake.
Yep.
I guess, like, we talked about that. Let's bring our guest in. We'll talk about Mormonism.
We got to bring him in.
Hey!
Returning triumphantly from the...
we had to.
Well, yeah,
From
I guess you're kind of a specialist in ghosts and also like, oh, he did that? Films. Jack Sinclair is joining us once again.
Hey,
Welcome back from the Casper episode.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's my pleasure.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's been a wacky summer, but overall, I'm doing all right.
It's only been 9 days of summer. What if I was like a summer originalist?
Yeah.
Where
so pagan, really?
Oh,
yes, exactly.
Wow. Good point.
Exactly. Summer is ikumen is something that I've heard recently. Jack, I do appreciate there's a what I assume is an inset or a recessed light behind you.
Oh yeah.
but it is giving the effect of one of those orbs in an old photograph where people say there's a ghost.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought about playing around with the lighting, but I thought
it's good. Perfect. It's the fourth guest.
I looked at that and I was like, it's nice and spooky. We're haunted. It's Casper. It's the witches. It's everything.
You've got a nice shadow going.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Gotta get some vertical
blinds.
Shutters.
I could turn the camera around. I'm looking at some shutters right now.
Oh man,
yeah.
And you've got your name in reverse gold letters on your door.
Yeah,
I guess they're not reversed. They're only reversed from the inside.
And I have the name of my old partner who died before the event.
Right. It's been scratched off with a key. Yeah.
I mean, your name is extremely Sam Spade style.
Right.
It's cool as hell.
Yeah. Well, gotta.
It goes with Private Eye. I would say.
Sinclair Private Eye.
You don't hear a lot of like. What's a name that's safe to make fun of?
White one?
Engelbert Humperdinck.
Okay, there you go.
Engelbert Humperdinck.
There you go.
Private Eye. Although I would trust that guy.
I don't know. What about,
for some
reason? You ever watched the Hanna-Barbera cartoon Inch High Private Eye?
No.
I remember seeing maybe a commercial for it on Boomerang or something. It was one of the shows
Johnny Quest and
it was more like Hong Kong Phooey, like really bad.
Oh,
right.
Like
gotcha.
Captain Caveman kind of.
I kind of like Captain Caveman. That one's kind of fun.
And then you find out that there's like they made a movie of like a direct to Max Inch High Private Eye movie that stars like
Danny DeVito,
Shirley MacLaine, and it's never going to be released.
Oh man.
Don't they have in one of the in Scoob? I think it's the recent film Scoob. I think like Will Forte plays Captain Caveman or something.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Nobody knows Captain Caveman.
Well, I mean, I do because I'm a dork who watched all these.
You're right,
awful
but I mean,
cartoons.
like the children going to see Scoob don't know Captain Caveman.
So there's also that like there's that show Jellystone that's like I guess a Yellowstone parody.
Oh,
but it's also just trying to do the whole.
Wait, is it Yogi? Is it like an updated Yogi Bear? Is it like the Gossip Girl reboot, but for Yogi Bear?
Yeah.
So like Boo Boo is bisexual or whatever?
Boo Boo can swing however he wants.
Boo Boo was always bisexual.
Right.
I have no opinion.
Well, great things come in bears, as we remember from the famous poster. Do you remember that?
That's so great. That was the original poster for the Yogi Bear movie.
It was the original poster for the Yogi Bear movie has Justin Timberlake Boo Boo standing directly in front of who did the voice of Yogi?
I think it was I don't.
Was it Dan Aykroyd?
It might have been. I remember Anna Faris and T.J. Miller were in the movie.
Right.
Recall.
But it was Boo Boo standing directly in front of Yogi Bear, and it said, "Great things come in bears," and so
of course now yep.
And that's why that movie.
This was also around the time there was that Brendan Fraser movie, Furry Vengeance, and it felt.
I do remember Furry Vengeance.
It felt like people with animal fetishes were taking over Hollywood for a moment.
Yeah.
Well, and then they made Zootopia. Then they all got together and made Zootopia.
Zootopia, which gave us some of the greatest fan fiction art of all time.
We need to remind our audience that ACAB extends to Judy Hopps and the other one,
the Jason Bateman.
Nick Foxman, or whatever his name is.
All right, Zootopia, totally related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is our Zootopia episode.
Yep.
Well, I had something I wanted to say.
Yeah, say it.
I don't remember what it was.
Is it, what if Paul Schrader had directed Zootopia? Might go a little something like this.
3 more hours of this.
What if he needed to prove that he could do comedy and special effects, and he made Zootopia?
I mean, it's almost like the probability. As we scroll back on his Facebook, the probability that he has posted about Zootopia increases toward 1. And so
he didn't see Taylor Swift was not in Zootopia, but if she had been,
no,
he would have been there. Yeah,
she might be in Zootopia or Zootopia or whatever they're going to call it, which is in the works. Nick Wilde is the name of the fox.
Oh.
I'm just trying to figure out if there's a Schrader collaborator,
but he's not a cop, right? He's just
he's a cop. Oh no, yeah, he joins the Zootopia Police Department, and then we've got Shakira. I can imagine Paul Schrader being into Shakira.
Yeah, me too.
I could see Jenny Slate being in a Paul Schrader movie at some point.
Sure. Yep.
I bet he liked that she said fuck on SNL.
SNL.
Remember that?
Has he ever worked with Idris Elba and J.K. Simmons and Octavia Spencer are in it? Have they ever worked with Paul?
I would believe
Alan
that
Tudyk.
Tommy Chong. I mean, he knows who that is. You know,
Yeah.
That's a lot for him.
I could see Bonnie Hunt also having been in a. Nope, no Bonnie Hunt. This is absolutely a good use of our time. Let's get to our signature segment, the 2 questions.
Yes,
we got to keep this thing on the rails. Now, this is of course, the segment where we ask each other 2 questions. Jack, were you able to come up with a question for us this morning?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to ask. So this is mostly for you, Jake. It's
yes.
You live in.
Fuck you, Ian.
I believe you still live in Los Angeles.
I believe that as well.
Do you believe? So, watching this movie, do you believe there are haunted residences in the city of Los Angeles or any city where you live? Do you believe that?
I mean, I've talked about this on the show. I'm pretty much a physical materialist in terms of my beliefs about what is and isn't real. But I also believe that if we think that we're capable of perceiving and measuring everything that is able to be perceived and measured, we are fools. That being said, Los Angeles does seem to attract, for lack of a better term, Looney Tunes. There's absolutely, I mean, right down the street from me, there's a place called the House of Intuition, where you can buy a candle shaped like a pair of scissors. And so if you need to cut something out of your life, you can light that candle. I was doing plenty of research about the various, occult and mystical elements within LA. So I don't know that I think there's actual ghosts or anything, but I do think that there is something weird about, there is something that draws weirdos to this weird town. So I don't know what that is, but...
And what are ghosts but some of nature's greatest weirdos?
A lot of them are, yeah. Especially the... what were they called? The 3 guys from Casper? Were they called the 3 guys? The Ghostly Trio?
The Ghostly Trio, that's what it was.
Yeah. I mean, that's really close to the 3 guys.
3 guys.
How long did they work on the Ghostly Trio?
Sure, about as long as you did, yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, they're not even ghastly. Like, that's at least an extension.
The Spooky Trio.
Yeah.
The Spooky Trio, the Otherworldly Trio.
Yeah.
Ghastly, now he is from Kyoto, presumably. That's where Nintendo is based.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, so...
I don't know where Game Freak is, though.
So I guess for Ian, I'll ask you, do you...
Well, yeah, are you dealing with brujas and stuff down there? You got a brujeria?
No, I mean, there are parts of this country that are much stronger in the history of black magic, although there's it's a progressive city and also a city with rich indigenous tradition. So there's some of this stuff.
We should say for the hordes of people who are tuning in for the first time for the witch hunt episode, Ian lives in Oaxaca de Juarez.
I do.
Mexico.
I used to live in Los Angeles, so I mean, I know about Los Angeles.
You had to get away from the ghosts.
I had to get away from all those ghosts, mostly one. But he's here with me now.
Got over the border.
Ooh.
That's right.
I can walk through walls, but not through the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you get a like a cleanse with an egg. That type of a thing is very common.
Sorry,
and
I don't think I know about like smudging with sage, but what is cleanse with an egg?
Maybe this is less common than I remembered than the United States. Nope. I actually don't know what they do
at the end, though.
Can't remember what they do at the end with the egg, but they sort of rub an egg all over to draw out the negative stuff. Anyway, I think it's nice that people are trying to help each other. I'm with you, Jake, that I become more doubtful when people make claims to the type of activity that is the type of activity you can measure, or the closer you get to just being like an experience. If you tell me
people are talking about specific frequencies.
Right. Or they talk about like a repeated appearance of something, it's like a visible person. Well, that's the type of thing you can check. If you tell me that you got like a strong sensation and a memory and so the type of, like you're saying, sort of on the border of unregisterable sense, then I'm open to this. I agree that humans have limitations, and that's.
What about ectoplasm?
Don't know.
Yeah,
her.
what about ectoplasm? Hey,
she's pretty nice, actually.
Wouldn't it be
cool.
them? I don't know them.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, okay, so hold on. Because I recently watched a video on YouTube, if you can believe it.
One of the most, if you're having a conversation about ghost responses.
No, it actually had nothing to do with this. Bear with me. And it was about some very funny and charismatic young men over there in England. One of the spookiest places there is.
Oh, yeah.
And they took it upon themselves to get their bathroom to a 0 bacteria state. They wanted to get their own bathroom totally sterile.
Extremely difficult. Yeah.
No, it gets crazy. They put on the Breaking Bad suits and stuff.
Okay.
Tyvek sponsored. I want to tell everybody about this week's sponsor, Tyvek. No, but they had agar plates or whatever. They had all of this stuff. Yep. And their goal at the end of the video was to eat pasta off the floor.
Wow.
Of the shower. Yeah. So, and then that got me thinking, because they cleaned the bathroom once, and then they put the swabs on the floor, and they put them on the agar dish.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking that cleaning your bathroom normal style is basically magical thinking. Like, that is...
No, this is...
witchcraft.
You're all mixed up. You're mistaken. The idea that any place or thing that you eat off doesn't have bacteria is magical thinking. You can reduce the bathroom down to healthy levels of bacteria.
I thought you were going to say that, like, cleaning the bathroom is like, a spiritual, it's an exorcism. It's cleaning. It's like...
I think what I'm saying is that it's about as effective. I'm saying what you're really doing is giving yourself...
It's not scientifically accurate.
You're totally mistaken.
There is such a thing as hygiene.
Wrong.
Look,
it's powerful.
We're all going into our bathroom and rubbing an egg inside the toilet bowl and saying, now it's clean and I can eat out of there.
Yeah, you eat the egg. Yeah.
All right. Maybe I'm full of shit, but it did make me think that it's more for the benefit is more mental than it is.
This is still wrong.
Microbacterial.
I don't want to see your bathroom.
I mean,
it's pretty clean.
Okay. His bathroom has been my bathroom at times.
Let me hold on. Now I have to talk about a different video, because I was watching another video by this guy whose whole thing is like...
We promised that the length of this episode was going to be less than the length of the film, and we're not doing a good job so far.
The film's 5 hours long, right? No, what are we? 100 minutes. All right, we got to get it under 100.
You chopped and screwed at it.
Yeah.
We did. All right, you know what? We're going to do a Patreon episode specifically on the video that I was going to talk about, because it's worth it. I'm going to get Ian's live reaction to this.
I think you should limit yourself to one YouTube video discussion per episode.
Yeah,
one YouTube video per day.
But whoever...
Bringing in Jack as the arbitrator of the podcast to limit Jake's YouTube video watch descriptions.
He is wearing that very fetching black and white vertical striped polo shirt and the AYSO approved black sneakers. My dad was a youth soccer coach, and he had to go get all black sneakers from Sport Chalet.
So
anyway, Jack, do you think, are there ghosts at your house or whatever?
I think there were a long time ago, but they just kind of vanished. You're
in the Bay Area, is that right?
I think there's haunted residences. I mean, it's a fog. I mean, San Francisco is very foggy.
Yeah, it's spooky.
It's true.
It is, and it's also appropriate to this episode. A city that's great for noir and detective stories.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, so much of its existence comes from the Maltese Falcon, which is pretty much like. And then of course there's Vertigo, which is the great.
I was gonna say this film seems like yet another Schrader film invoking Vertigo.
There's a lot of Schrader. Here's the thing. There are a lot. We'll get to it.
Yeah, I got a big list of explicit noir references.
Oh yeah, there's some very interesting stuff. But
Number 1, about a detective.
No, I didn't buy that. I didn't get that part. Anyway, hold on. So that's pretty much it. I think that we create our own hauntings. I'm not a fan of the word hauntology. I think it's kind of stupid. No more disrespect than necessary to Mark Fisher. But I never understood what hauntology was supposed to mean other than nostalgia itself. But it's an interesting idea that we are constantly surrounded by the past. and we are fetishizing the past.
Well, yeah, and you bring that with you in your mind, which is your little private perceiver.
Everything you look at is connected to the things you've seen.
It's that it's that our past includes, by definition, where things could have gone. And so things that went poorly in our lives, we imagine there was a nexus point where everything got different, and we imagine how much we'd want to live in different eras.
Very noirish perspective you've got there.
So I think it's appropriate. I think that might be why Schrader appeals to me so much. I think he is interested in these ideas.
I think so. That's why you're wearing that trench coat and fedora.
Yeah, and I'm wearing I got multiple Fletch-like disguises at the ready.
Oh, there's one I'm going to have to ask you not to use during the show. We've run into problems with that one before.
It's not the audience. It's an audio-only podcast.
Yeah, exactly. For a reason.
Whoa, this is actually setting up my question.
Please.
This is perfect. Okay, my question is, do you think there is a not explicitly racist, but certainly troublesome accent that you would be willing to do for an entire film? So no cross-race stuff. That's
okay. So you're specifically referring to Julian Sands'
I'm thinking
Irish.
Julian Sands and Cheryl Lee.
Both.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. They both.
First of all, I saw the Horizon: An American Saga Chapter 1 yesterday, which features something very exciting, which is Irish Michael Rooker.
Whoa!
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, he's an Irish U.S. Marshal guy.
Oh yeah.
It's great. He tells a little boy that your parents went up to their heavenly reward. So clearly, I'm willing to do Irish.
I feel like you cast Michael Rooker as Irish if Colm Meaney is busy.
Yes, Colm Meaney had a book tour or something.
Yeah.
I would be willing to do Irish, I guess.
Julian Sands is doing a type of Irish that I think no American person would do, which I think is very cool.
Right.
Also not a perfect Irish accent by any stretch of the imagination, but I was fascinated by it. It's like...
Well, it's weird that you cast somebody with such a specifically great voice as Julian Sands.
Yeah,
he's one of those
true.
guys.
Yeah.
This is something that also would happen. In the 90s, they would cast like Tim Curry. This often happened. For some reason, Tim Curry was really interested in doing... yes, I get why he would want to do animation a lot. He's got a great voice.
Doesn't he do something insane in Congo? Doesn't Tim Curry do
I think he does a voice like this in Congo.
Is he doing South African or something?
I think he might. I think he is supposed to be South African. Okay. I just remember he does a weird... I was specifically thinking of him in Don Bluth's immortal classic, The Pebble and the Penguin, where he does this weird New York accent. He does this terrible New York accent.
Tim Curry in Congo is playing Herkimer Homolka, a Romanian philanthropist.
Right.
I think I was confusing him with... I believe Ernie Hudson is doing some kind of African accent in that film.
Hey, you know what? Congo was directed by Frank Marshall.
By Jimmy Buffett's best friend, Frank Marshall, yeah. I would...
Who also directed Arachnophobia, which had Julian Sands, who's in the movie we're talking about.
Oh, shit.
There you go. Brought it back.
Go. Ian, so my answer is I would do the Julian Sands Irish accent in tribute to the man.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Are you going to do a bonus episode on Frank Marshall's Beach Boys documentary and just talk about the Mike Love bits?
Jeremy Allison, who drew the artwork for the show, has repeatedly asked me if I have watched the Frank Marshall Beach Boys documentary yet.
Any
not
day
just
now.
have you watched it,
the high fidelity yet.
Yeah, you're going to.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Ian, what about you? Would you do?
What about our guest? What kind of accent would you feel comfortable doing?
I think I could. I'd attempt Australian. I'm not going to do it here. Not going to do it here. I'm only going to do it
Tarantino style.
I mean, you could definitely beat Tarantino at the Australian, but could you beat Elizabeth Moss at the New Zealand from Top of the Lake? Her New Zealand accent, pretty good.
Really good, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
You rarely hear an American pull that off. Just like
top of the lake to you, she said.
It's actually Irish. You're doing
right. That's what. Yeah, it's consistent with what I said from before.
It's with Moss. I watched all of Mad Men again lately, and made me forget.
I was like, is there an Australian character on it? And then I realized why you were talking about
Elizabeth.
The much more obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still great. And
Madman's good. Good show. I just watched...
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first, folks.
That's our big unanimous assessment. Yeah.
I just watched a film starring Kiernan Shipka last night, The Black Coat's Daughter.
Oh yeah, that's playing. That's playing in 35 millimeter here pretty soon.
Oh wow! Sure. Well, his Oz Perkins, son of Anthony Perkins, and Barry Berenson, he directed that one, and he's got a new film coming out. But
that's really awesome.
All this to say, my Irish character's name would be Kiernan Shipka, also.
Beautiful.
Ian, did you answer if you would do the
I think
the Congo
I would like
voice?
to. Yeah, I would like to be a white Caribbean man. No, I think I would do maybe like a Philadelphia, Delaware accent.
Philadelphia's really hard to do. I've never heard any of it.
I know.
The only Jason Sheridan accent? From my favorite podcast The Ride, Jason Sheridan's Philadelphia accent is truly incredible. I think you know how people with accents, they have like a keyword, a key phrase
that gets them into it. Yep.
For me, he says, when he says the word witch, he says like as in witch that. Okay. He says watch.
Whoa.
And I feel like watch would be my inroad.
I could do, well, speaking of podcasters I could try the Mike Mitchell Quincy. I really want to know. I really want to be able to say the word good the way Mike Mitchell says it. It's really hard. I can do popcorn, hot dog.
Popcorn, mom. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. I feel like this is a vowel sound that like after I turned 7 or whatever, like my mouth just can't make that sound anymore.
Yeah, this is something. Yeah, like this is, it's sort of like how they're, like it's impossible to teach feral children to learn languages.
Yeah. Will's kids, they're just mute. I'm sorry. Witch Hunt is a 1994 HBO television film. Jack, what's your history with Paul Schrader, and what is your history, if any, with the film Witch Hunt?
Oh, well, I can answer the second question first. Had never seen Witch Hunts until very recently, until I volunteered to do it for the podcast. I first became aware of it
bravely.
Yep.
There was some tweet, and I haven't been able to find it. There was a tweet where somebody was clear, I was watching some old VHS and a trailer for it, and they uploaded the trailer, and it just looked utterly bizarre. And they just said, "Google who directed this movie."
Yep, I'm googling it now,
and I googled it, and my jaw dropped, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Because
I came across Cast It. What?
I just googled it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What?
Yeah.
I came across Cast a Deadly Spell, I think on HBO Go back in the halcyon days. And I thought, what is this?
Yeah, of course, this has come up 5 times on the podcast, mostly in the Clint Eastwood season.
It really struck me because this is a film starring Fred Ward, who's
amazing.
Yes. But anyway, we'll talk about it in a second. But I watched it and I thought, this is a lot of fun. And then when you watch a movie and then you go to IMDb or Wikipedia or whatever, I saw there was a sequel, a semi-sequel, sort of a remake sequel, directed by Paul Schrader. And I was like, what the fuck? And then we had it in stock at the video store I used to work at on a DVD, I believe like a rip.
I was going to say now, hold on, because I watched it on HBO Max and that thing was not
it was
DVD
like a VHS
quality.
rip.
If they don't have it.
It's not as good. I think I watched it when I used to do the Hooptober Halloween horror movie watching challenge on Letterboxd. I think this is one of the things I dug up. So, yeah.
Here's the thing. Cast a Deadly Spell. We'll get to this. Cast a Deadly Spell is certainly better, but I had a lot more fun. I had a lot more fun watching.
Oh, interesting. Wow. That's very interesting to me.
Improbable. Okay, so
but
what's your relationship with old PS?
Paul Schrader. God, like a lot of cinephile freaks, I became obsessed when I saw Taxi Driver.
Of course.
At 15 or around 14 or 15. I saw it probably before I should have. I saw it the same weekend I saw Clockwork Orange, The Conversation, Straw Dogs, and Taxi Driver. Got them all from Hollywood Video.
Okay.
And I was in I want to watch some 70s movies. These look good. I had to get my dad to rent them.
Largely
they're all
speaking.
great. And Taxi Driver just disturbed me in a way I didn't know movies could. It was not my first Scorsese. I'd seen Goodfellas at a sleepover when I was 12, and I loved it. But that and The Road Warrior were the best sleepover movies I ever saw.
Sure.
But, The worst, by the way, was Caddyshack 2. I don't know how that happens, but
that's very sleepover. I understand how that happened.
So yeah, Taxi Driver just completely. It's like, there's all those thousands of stories out there about people having their mind blown by a certain film, and I genuinely thought this was the greatest movie I'd ever seen, and I probably wasn't wrong. I think there are other...
it's
still sometimes thinking that myself.
Yeah, it's one of the ones where if you say that, nobody's going to be like, you're pulling my leg.
So it's still like, so my favorite movie of all time is Whit Stillman's The Last Days of Disco, but if I'm talking to normies who don't know about, who are just going to be like, what's that? I'll usually say Taxi Driver, or is my favorite
Furry
movie.
Vengeance.
If not that, I'll often say Vertigo.
Okay, sure.
Which I think Paul Schrader's heard of.
He has, yeah.
He might have, yeah.
I also, this movie blew me away, and I tried to see as much Scorsese as I possibly could, but I also was like, the guy who wrote it made a lot of other movies too, and not just with Scorsese. And so I would just...
We're finding that out.
I would just aimlessly... I would just basically whichever ones I could find. So like I watched like Light of Day very shortly after that.
Oof.
The obvious next.
Interesting. Then, must have confused.
It was just what's going to pop up on your Netflix queue, and I just typed in.
Light of Day probably so far I think the closest to this film in terms of vibe from the Schrader.
Yeah.
Well, that's a tough question. I was also comparing them.
Cat People, I think, has a lot in common.
It does.
Well,
you're right. There is a fair amount of overlap there.
Voodoo shenanigans, but and I would say. So then, American Gigolo was definitely a big favorite of mine at that moment. So it's still, so like, but it's just generally I've followed him throughout, and I've loved his online cranky presence. Who doesn't? I just love that he's a guy who keeps making movies and is an extremely inconsistent in terms of quality, but extremely consistent in terms of style and concerns. He's a problem auteur, and I love that for him. I love that for all of us. I think that his existence is a rich gift to cinema.
He's a friend of the medium. I think similar to a Marty. Well, but he's not. But he's not as refined as Marty or Spielberg or the guys who he can't help but be like a little shit.
That's what I love about him. I love that he doesn't filter himself. He certainly, I'm sure many times people around him, people working for him, wish he would filter himself.
I think this has been documented, yeah.
Yeah.
But if that were the case, if he were capable of doing that, he might have a more consistent filmography, but we wouldn't have the heights that he's capable of giving us.
I agree. This one is the same. His same.
We're getting into the struggle mode, the struggle era of
the sort of much maligned, fallow period of his supposedly.
Your audience is just champing at the bit for Touch. That's the.
I mean, Touch is having a moment. Touch because it got that Blu-ray.
I'm actually excited to talk about Touch.
Yeah, I got on Criterion Channel. I saw a few people caping for it.
Yeah.
But this one. Oh yeah. Well, anyway, so like my top 5 Schraders. Number 1 is First Reformed.
Okay.
I think it's
what's right there in the title?
Of course. Yeah.
Number 2 is Second Reformed.
Yeah.
Or as I call it, Mishima.
Okay.
Which is really
nice.
And then I'd say American Gigolo, Blue Collar, and Light Sleeper. I think that's like a respectable,
strong
respectable top 5. But I also, but as with Clint Eastwood, I have my sicko picks that are outside hover around, and those are Cat People, which I know is not anywhere near as good as the masterful original, but I love its psychotic energy. I love how
I had fun watching it too.
A lot of people hate it. A lot of people really hate it. But I like that you guys were into it.
Thank you. I mean, just as a visual and musical experience, it's
that's and Malcolm McDowell and Nastasia Kinski are just they're fantastic. And then I unironically completely adore the Canyons. I think it's
the the ultimate sicko.
Right. I also
one vote.
This will be I genuinely love it. I think that I would love to host a double feature of the Canyons with a similar, came out I think the same year, Ridley Scott and Cormac McCarthy's The Counselor.
Oh,
I was going to say The Counselor.
Yeah.
They're both it's both cases of aging auteurs collaborating with literary, like people, writers better known for
big names,
literary. And I'm also working on a written piece that'll be on a Substack that'll probably be up by the time this episode airs. And it'll be July. I'm trying to July launch just a place to write things outside of Twitter, and I'm working on a piece about 2 Richard Gere films of the early '80s: American Gigolo, Breathless.
Oh, nice.
Which I think is superior to Godard's Breathless, but we can argue about that.
This is not. I mean, Tarantino, I think, would agree with you. There are people who hold this opinion.
Yeah, no, it's. But I do think
Ian's eyes bugged out like.
Nothing against the the art film's great. I'm not pretending it's not, but I do think I'm not going to say Schrader's Cat People is better than Turner's, but I am going to say McBride's Breathless is better. And
very interesting.
What I want to write about, yes, Tarantino and Bret Easton Ellis are part of this piece because I think that these 2 movies, these 2 specific Richard Gere LA movies, pretty much were in many ways the launching pads for the styles of the 2 Gen X LA natives who changed the culture. And Bret Easton Ellis is obviously incredibly indebted to American Gigolo.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
So speaking of American Gigolo, the counterpart to Mr. Skin that is for male nudity.
Mr. Man.
It's called Mr. Man. Thank you, Jack. Yeah. Should it not be? No, my question is, should it not be Mrs. Skin?
I think so. They had Mr. Skin was on an episode of Gilbert Gottfried's podcast way back in the day. Obviously back in the day because Gilbert, unless they
ghost himself now.
Mr. Skin used to go on Stern all the time, right? I think that's that was.
But they asked him about Mr. Man, and I think he just said like somebody else bought Mrs. Skin. Mr. Man was
that's too bad.
Okay. Yeah,
it should be Mrs. Skin. Also the other reason they didn't is because he originally thought like, oh, this will be for women, and then very early on they figured out like, oh no, this is for gay men. Gay men are the ones who want to use this. So if we put Mrs. in the name, it's gonna turn that.
It's just funny that the one that's for pictures of naked ladies is Mr. Skin already. It's like really Mr. Man should be called Mr. Skin.
Yeah, Mr. Skin is repulsive. The name of it is so objectionable to me. Mr. Man is great. I would visit the website of MrMan.com.
The problem with Mr. Man is it makes me think of Kathy Bates in Misery.
Yeah,
that's true.
Or
I'm gonna hit my legs with a mallet or whatever.
There's also Mr. Man on Smiling Friends.
Okay, I haven't seen Smiling Friends, but I think it's like if we met Michael Mann, would we call him Mr. Man, and would we then be thinking about Richard Gere's penis? That's a question that we all deal with.
Richard Gere's penis is in both American Gigolo and Breathless.
It's in all his movies. It's just not always visible. Let's talk about Witch Hunt. Okay, so there's.
Do we have?
We do. I think we do. Yeah, we owe it to our listeners.
What we owe to ourselves is to talk about Witch Hunt.
Okay, so there's a film called Cast a Deadly Spell that comes out on.
Boy, is there ever.
HBO. It's an HBO original film was it 1991? Is that the?
I think so.
Yes, 1991, and it's directed by Martin Campbell, Mr.
The Goat,
Mr. GoldenEye and Casino Royale and Edge of Darkness.
Vertical
Limit, Mask of Zorro, Legend of Zorro, and
No Escape.
Everyone say it with me.
Favorite.
2017 Jackie Chan film, The Foreigner. We're all thinking it. Haven't seen it. He plays.
We're all thinking Green Lantern too.
Oh yeah, he did Green Lantern. Yeah. And it's produced by Galen Hurd, who was at one point married to James Cameron and then married to Brian De Palma, and is a major producing force in Hollywood.
And from what I hear, one of the nicest people in Hollywood.
She on Twitter. She's always posting promotional stuff for stuff that you would think that Galen Hurd wouldn't be bothered to promote that she produced. But
yeah, pretty nice.
She's like a nice lady.
Small testimony to her.
But that film stars Fred Ward as Detective H. Philip Lovecraft, and it's a mashup of a film noir parody in the style of a Marlowe and the Cthulhu mythos. Back before that was almost always tiresome, and it's a lot of fun. It's got great. It's so got fun great to watch. Practical effects. I think the tone is struck. It's very precisely.
I agree. It's a film that knows exactly what it is. The effects are terrific. It's like almost not quite brain dead level, like goopy glorpy, but if you like that type of stuff, it's so fun to watch. I would say
it's about on par with like a really good episode of Tales from the Dark Side.
It feels very Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side.
Yeah.
It's around the same time, and I think there was this.
Julianne Moore appears and then sings for like 7 minutes of the film.
Is she lip syncing? If she's lip syncing, you would think they would get somebody who sounds more like Torch Singer from 1948.
Right. Yeah, it's a strange.
It's a weird.
Matchup,
yeah,
but
it's also got two of my favorite.
Got David Warner
and Clancy Brown.
Great David Warner and. Speaking of accents that maybe you shouldn't be doing, Clancy Brown is the voice of Mr. Krabs.
That's true, yes.
That's what they should have called.
Yes, I was going to say, he's the king of
Mr. Skin.
Early 2000s cartoons.
Yes, he is. And he's also the Kurgan from Highlander.
Oh, yeah, well, David Warner. David Warner also did a bunch of Ghoul.
Yeah.
He was Ra's al Ghul, and he was the Loeb on Freakazoid.
That's right.
He's the bad guy from Tron. And
he's Time Bandits.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's in Titanic.
The Omen he's in. He's great, just a great...
Star Trek 5 and 6 is different characters.
Yes, great English character actor.
We love David Warner.
And so that film is a lot of fun. There's like, it's an obvious riff on The Big Sleep, I think, in its sort of structure. There's jokes about how like it never rains in LA and then the rain is blood, like that kind of thing, where it's like it's sort of obvious LA jokes, but with magic, witchy twist on them. Really enjoy the film.
And the big thing of both this film and Witch Hunt for the main characters that they are among the only non-magic users in this newly magic world. You've talked before of the opening to Cast a Deadly Spell, which is sort of like Oceans or Battlefields.
It's very
style.
Much, yeah. It just says
everyone.
It says Los Angeles in 1948. Everyone uses magic.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean,
which is much better than the convoluted intro that Witch Hunt.
Well, I think I think they speak to some of the distinctions between the films because Witch Hunt opens with a pastiche of.
Hold on. Let's just say that film is written by a guy named Joseph Doherty. Joseph Doherty he's also a playwright. He wrote a bunch of episodes of 30-something, and more recently has written a bunch of episodes of Pretty Little Liars. One of those, like, impossibly still working TV writers where you would think that, like, they would have, that the skill set would have changed or something. But no, he's still very much involved with current television.
He seems like the kind of guy who can write any genre, like, decently. They just throw it in.
Right. He wrote he's written a number of television films, including Pirates of Silicon Valley, which is the TNT film where Noah Wyle plays Steve Jobs and Anthony Michael Hall plays Bill Gates. He wrote the Christopher Guest Attack of the 50-Foot Woman remake with Daryl Hannah that premiered on HBO as well. But so he wrote that movie, and then he wrote a sequel called Witch Hunt.
He did. Yep.
But it seems that Paul Schrader comes along, and most of this is coming from an article called "Exorcising His Dark Side." Paul Schrader, it's from the Los Angeles Times, written by Daniel Cerone in 1994, which is sort of a...
How do you could find this? Because I could find nothing.
It's an important article. It's the Keystone article, and it does have a three-sentence headline, the rare three-sentence headline.
Yes, Paul Schrader has spun many morality tales of the outcast as hero. With his new HBO film Witch Hunt, he abandons the doom and gloom and goes for laughs instead. Now, this is 2 sentences, and I do have a question for you, Ian, which is, are you okay?
You're right. I was using the poetic technique of hyperbole, but I'm glad I have to explain it to you on the podcast. That's very interesting.
I thought maybe you had another sentence that I didn't know about. Maybe your version was different, like the Mexico version.
Sure.
LAtimes.mx.
Yep.
So this explains that Schrader, he had trouble getting Light Sleeper made, as we explored on that episode. It says here, directing assignments have been tough to come by for Schrader these days. The young wave of movie studio executives aren't aware of him, Schrader believes, and he wants to use Witch Hunt to demonstrate that he's no longer the brooding filmmaker his resume suggests. And so his idea with this is that he wanted to make a comedy with special effects to prove to these coked up MBAs running the studios now that he too can do Spielberg, basically, I think.
Right. There's a quote from Hopper in here. Basically, he and Dennis Hopper characterized themselves as being like unknowns to this new generation of like Wall Street producers, basically.
Right.
Which is insane. For Hopper.
Yeah, I think in both cases it's insane. I don't know that it's true.
But I mean, this was the same year Hopper did Speed, so he's not unknown.
Which is all those guys love doing Speed.
That's exactly right.
I think what it really is two guys who have a reputation for maybe being difficult to work with, assuming that nobody wants to work with them because they just don't know about him, not because they know about him, and what they know about them is that I don't want to work this guy. Yeah.
And Hopper does have some genuine insight. I think he says they don't know where we came from.
Bad guy from A Bug's Life?
Yes.
Voiced by Kevin Spacey?
Offers a little bit of wisdom to all of us here. Let me quote from Bug's Life very quickly.
Yeah. Who Schrader wants to work with.
Yeah. Right. Schrader does want to work with Kevin Spacey because he has been acquitted. And of course, we know that the court system is perfect.
Yep. Dennis Hopper said, they don't know where we came from and how we got here. Most of them, unfortunately, are corporate raiders, in my opinion, who are more interested in how much stock they can steal at the end of it all, and they don't want to make any mistakes. I think he's right. If you did this as a goodwill gesture, Dennis Hopper, this is not what you should be saying in the newspaper about the people you're trying to get to hire you. But it's a rare bit of positive contribution from our friend.
Well, Hopper had directed a few really interesting movies in the early 90s that were just badly handled with release. I don't know if you've ever seen The Hot Spot or Catch Fire.
I have heard of these films, and they've recently, this is a big, you got to check out The Hot Spot. I feel like they've grown in estimation.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of The Hot Spot, especially especially if you like seeing Virginia Madsen or Jennifer Connelly with their clothes off. That's fun.
Is Mr. Skin on the show with us right now?
Yeah.
Well, also Don Johnson with his clothes on.
I'm no fan of Hot Spots myself, and I sometimes have to get those little things for my shoes from the drugstore.
Yep.
That is what I deserve, Jack. Thank you.
Yeah, that's speaking of jokes, Witch Hunt's full of them.
So Schrader also says this is
crazy to me.
This is weird. He says, quote, HBO offered me this comedy. Well, it wasn't quite so much a comedy as it is now. It has become a comedy. It was originally a kind of film noir parody with special effects. So he
says he wrote out the Raymond Chandler parts because they were too dark. It really feels like he just tried to make what maybe he thought people wanted him to make. Yeah. Some of the weakest elements of the film are these really broad, like almost laugh tracky jokes that they make. I mean, there's not a laugh track, but it feels like turning to the audience a little bit.
Yeah, it feels like an impression of comedy directing.
Yep.
Well, that's because this makes a lot of sense because Chast a Deadly Spell, it's not like it doesn't have jokes in it, but they tend to come out of their situational jokes and they come from the characters. Whereas in Witch Hunt, there's just this really bizarre, broad tone where it's constantly. It clearly feels like a rewritten script because some scenes it's taking the magic completely seriously, and then other times, and then there's we'll get to it later, but there's a scene where somebody is turned into a mannequin and they're digging up her body from from her car from a watery grave, and it's clearly supposed to be we're supposed to laugh that she was a mannequin, but then they're playing it like it's completely straight drama.
Right, and then you're also like, was she a mannequin before? Was she a bewitched mannequin, or has she been transformed into a mannequin? It asks more questions.
I watched that part again, and allegedly, what's supposed to have happened is she got turned into one while she was driving, and it made her car crash.
Right.
But it's not very clear.
So it's also meant to be an extended Big Sleep pastiche because that entire scene is in the Big Sleep. But
there's a shift, like a very distinct shift from the 40s post-war milieu of the first one to what feels very 50s, very sleek Art Deco. It feels a lot more Kiss Me Deadly than it feels, the Big Sleep or whatever.
But what's interesting, something I had to mention here is the location work on this movie is insane. These are really expensive, gorgeous places throughout Los Angeles. Many of them featured in Tom Anderson's Los Angeles Plays itself.
Yes, which is
largely
also,
shot like extremely flat TV.
And that combined with the Angelo Badalamenti score makes it feel like the pilot cut of Mulholland Drive before he added the wraparounds that make it feel demonic. I know. It's got this kind of like airless camp quality, but that the film doesn't necessarily know that it's going for,
I do wonder if the reason it looks so bad is because we watched this with VHS quality.
Sure.
It was shot by Jean-Yves Escoffier.
Yeah, who he's like a Leos Carax's primary collaborator for a long time.
I did not even bother to search the DP because I assumed it was nothing.
He shot Gummo.
He shoots Gummo. He shoots...
Paul Schrader, big fan of Kids at this point, has written an article about it.
Yeah, the year before this, he shoots Dream Lover, which is directed by Nicholas Kazan, the screenwriter of Patty Hearst. Just an interesting... interesting. But he also shoots he shoots Good Will Hunting, which is a film that looks... like cheese to me. Like that to me, that is what Oscar bait looks like.
I think it's just because movies try to ape Good Will Hunting. Sure. I think Escoffier is pretty great.
What about ape Good Will Hunting?
What if they ape math?
They get to
Oh no, you're combining Kevin Smith's interests.
What if imagine Andy Serkis hugging Toby Kebbell in mocap and saying it's not your fault, but they're both
that
apes.
Could be quite beautiful. Yeah,
I'm interested now.
That could be good. That could be
somehow the Robin Williams character has less arm hair in this version. Hey, come on.
No, that's a good joke. No, I was saying you said it before.
Go crazy.
Anyway,
but it's shot by Escoffier. It's got the Badalamenti score. It's got heavy hitters in it. I mean,
it does.
We've mentioned the cast. You got Dennis Hopper, Penelope Ann Miller, Eric Bogosian, Cheryl Lee Ralph, Julian Sands.
Got some small Debbie Mazar. Yeah, exactly. Clifton Collins Jr. roles.
Although,
and we'll eventually have to talk about Lip Sync.
We do need to talk about Lip Synca.
Yeah, we'll get to that, of course.
John Epperson as Lip Synca as Vivian Dart, and we also have presumably the same special effects team that did the intro to those DK Discovery videos that you watched in elementary school.
He's not being mean. He might be being generous, unfortunately, when he says this.
There's some really...
as much as the first one, the Cast a Deadly Spell is like a beautiful celebration of practical effects and goop. This one is very early CGI.
Yeah. The floating words that she speaks to summon Shakespeare.
I mean, there is a charm to it now because they're.
See, I knew you would say. I put a note in my.
It's the Tim and Eric. It's the Tim and Eric thing that like bad effects age interesting.
Yeah, but to me, it's just that, which is not the same thing as being like practical effects, which age but are still accomplish what they were originally trying to accomplish.
It's a different kind of
purely a removal.
Right.
Sense.
Yeah, well, I'll also talk about another. I hate the concept of vaporwave. I've never understood what it means. It always means something else to me, but it's like all that I can figure out that vaporwave.
Well, basically, what it means is that a light is both a vapor and a wave. Is kind of what it's like you have to
Einstein
hold both ideas in your head at the same. It's. I don't know if there's an inherent conservatism to vaporwave. I don't know if we can accuse them of that exactly, but there is a kind of that there are forms of
there's kind of uncritical nostalgia.
That's a good way to put it.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's kind of, and it's an uninteresting.
Would you call it a hauntology?
Well, I was going to say one of the reasons I love one of my favorite movies of the year is I saw the TV Glow, which There's a lot going on in that film, but one of the very clear themes of the film is it's almost an anti-vaporwave film. It's a movie critiquing art.
Haven't seen it yet.
Narrating and nostalgia.
Does it have an Irish Michael Rooker in it?
No, but it's got Fred Durst.
Wait, what?
Fred Durst is in this movie.
Oh shit! All right, well now.
He's really creepy. Hey, it's a really good film.
I gotta get rolling to the nearest theater.
There you go.
Or you'll break stuff.
Yeah, or I'll break stuff.
Wow. Don't know nearly enough Fred Durst music to be able to participate in this, but I'm loving it, guys.
It sounds like when it comes to I saw the TV glow, Jack, you're the fan. Isn't that the fanatic? Sorry, you're the fanatic.
The Tony Scott.
Fuck.
Okay.
Have
you seen the fanatic?
No, but I've seen
oh my god!
Oh wait, I'm not supposed to talk about YouTube videos anymore. I've seen clips of the fanatic.
So effects. I think there's like two good moments of effects in here. There's the zombie's eyes pop out at a certain moment, and I said, "Now this is what we've been missing this whole time." I do want
to ask you about the zombies, Ian and Jack.
There's something.
The zombies are so in Cast a Deadly Spell and in this film, we do get some engagement with. And we'll talk about it a little more, but we get some engagement with the socio-political climate of the late 40s and the early 50s in terms of it being hard to be black then, harder even than now, if you can imagine it, and hard to be a woman and hard to be a queer person.
Yes.
And I wonder how did you feel about the zombies? Because like this is, potentially an effective metaphor for the exploitation of black bodies.
Right. I saw you were being fully dismissive in your original review of Cast a Deadly Spell.
Yeah,
I was
from
a little
like 1998 Letterboxd or whatever. Yeah.
Because, I was going to say, I think it is superficial. I think that's fair to say, because everything in the film in terms of how it engages with serious topics is superficial. So I guess it doesn't feel out of place to me. That's where I would, be more upset.
What's interesting? Well, here's where it gets complicated, because I do think that the first Cast a Deadly Spell is trying to just sort of use this as window dressing. Like it has that weird. The first one has the somewhat skeevy running gag of an underage girl trying to lose her virginity to older men, and that ends up saving the world.
Well, I think older men trying to take a young woman's virginity, more like, or trying to have sex with a 16-year-old for the first time. Well, we don't have to even engage with virginity nonsense.
Right.
Well, the virginity is crucial to the
plot. Right, it is.
That's why David Warner.
A joke that David Warner is trying to sacrifice a virgin, and it turns out that his understanding of his own daughter's behavior is misinformed, which is it's sort of funny.
Not bad. It is funny. It's just that it's handled in this really sleazy way where she's trying to sleep with older men throughout the film. Yeah. Anyway, so what I'm saying is there's certainly levels to where the jokes can run into problems. And to me, with what makes Witch Hunt weird on this level is, and it seems like it may be an issue of the rewriting, is that it gets rather serious when Eric Bogosian is talking about how people want to find someone to hate, how there has to be a scapegoat.
Right.
Yes.
Well, so let's explain the plot of the film.
Yeah, we haven't done
this movie has a plot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can do it quickly. This is
a fast one.
Yeah. So, as Jack alluded to, like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is obviously a big influence on these films, we've got a classic gumshoe who refuses to engage, in this case, with magic. In that case, he doesn't want to work with tunes. In this one, he doesn't want to work with magic. And he is hired by an actress played by Penelope Ann Miller, Kim Hudson, who is styled very much like Kim Novak in Vertigo throughout the film.
Yeah, I wrote down Penelope Ann Miller is like, if I hadn't, like, it was inevitable that she would work with Schrader at some point. She is a perfect Schrader.
She's great.
Sure.
She's also great in The Freshman, which is a film from around this time that I recommend people see.
Carlito's Way.
Yeah, of course, just came out. Yeah, a year earlier. I was confused. I was surprised to see the timeline here.
Yeah.
And same year, a movie that I actually love, The Shadow.
I haven't
the old Jake's
gotten
dad
all the way
film.
through The Shadow. Yeah, no, that's The Spirit you're thinking.
Okay,
that my dad likes.
Me.
Oh, yeah.
Now at this time she's also married to a considerably younger Will Arnett. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
That's what
early 90s. Yeah,
interesting.
Oh man, we're gonna have to cancel her for the age gap.
I don't know. That's fine. And so he is hired by this actress who thinks that her husband, who is a movie exec, is cheating on her. N.J. Gottlieb. And in the background of this, there is a senator, a sort of opportunistic senator, Larson Crockett, played by Eric Bogosian, who is conducting very obviously McCarthy-style literal witch hunts, where he is scapegoating the magic users of the world, or of the country rather, much like McCarthy. Well, not much. We'll get into it, but it's in a way that's meant to be a kind of analog for the McCarthy Red Scare trials of communists in Hollywood.
Well, it's about HUAC.
Yeah, it's about HUAC. Yeah, and then this gets into Lovecraft's world when is she still his landlady in this one?
I don't think she is.
Because the characters kind of get reimagined, recast from Cast a Deadly Spell. She is like his
Hippolyta Kropotkin, who in the first film is his like well-meaning landlady. I mean, she's a great character in the first one, and in this one
she's like works with him basically. She is a black magic practitioner.
Did you notice though what her middle name was when Bogosian speaks the full name?
Yes,
after Marie Laveau.
Yes, okay. Of course.
Really.
Yep.
She's played by Cheryl Lee Ralph, and so she gets involved in this. There's also Finn Macha or Macha. They say it differently.
They say it Maxa a few times in the film. Real lack of attention to detail.
This is competing private eye, played by Julian Sands, who has a fucked up eye and a fucked up Irish accent.
Yep.
And he does use magic. And so this sort of takes Lovecraft through the under high and low worlds of Los Angeles in the 50s as a noir story tends to do, and ends with a show trial basically of Hippolyta, where she is tied to a stake. She's going to be burned by Eric Bogosian, and it turns out that he is working with, it's one of these double triple cross things.
Yeah,
this doesn't make any. This part doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I'm sure it was in the original script, but it's so tacked on that it feels like dismissive to the audience. Like if you were even trying to bother to pay attention to the mystery, you're an idiot, because we don't care about that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, first of all, I would like to talk about the kind of confused central metaphor, because
sure. Well, then, just to finish off, we get a little face off with Finn Macha after the senator's been defeated. We get,
and that leads to what the trailer for this movie calls mind-blowing video effects, or something to that regard.
Well, I would say that
a video effect to me sounds like a star wipe more than anything else. That's
sure.
Yeah.
But I think basically from the moment they start to hunt him down, those are some of the only effects in the film that I enjoyed. We get this the Raven scene we'll talk about, I'm sure, but we also get this rear projection cloud tank storm that I really love, and also
cloud tank that feels practical.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was happy to see a little bit of actual stuff. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. But the film, the prior film and this film both engage with. And this film opens even with like a montage explaining the world that also explains that there are licensed and unlicensed magic users, and that there are people who use magic professionally and people who use magic for, unscrupulously. And Hippolyta she's later described as a card carrying witch, much as people were described as card carrying communists, but in this case, the government is issuing the card. Like it's not like people were government licensed communists in the 50s.
In America, anyway.
Yeah, now that I'm allowed to talk about the opening montage, it's like a news of the world style, news on parade, discussion of what's happening. I mean, it's much more formally bold. Go ahead, Jack.
Do you think Schrader, when he was doing that, said it'll be like Citizen Kane?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it is. It's like aspirational. Yeah. It's trying to elevate the film in a way that's Cast a Deadly Spell never does, but it's also so confused in its cultural commentary. Like Jake is saying, it's makes references to like TV dinners and magic.
Yeah, it's also like an advertising parody
So magic comes across as like commercialism or like shortcutting, but also it's communism and also it's from the government, like you're saying. It's
regulated.
It's like it's trying to do 3 or 4 different things and it doesn't figure out. It's very confusing as to what you're actually going to be what you're actually going to be watching. Right. It doesn't really figure it out after that.
Yep. Yeah. And like there's some fun involved in some kind of, I think, clever explorations of what specifically like Hollywood tycoons would use magic for. In one case, Hippolyta is hired to, as we've alluded to, summon William Shakespeare to 1950, whatever it is, in order to write additional dialogue.
Oh, yeah. So that's a joke on it's an urban legend that the 1929 Sam Taylor film of Taming of the Shrew had a credit at one point that said, written by William Shakespeare, additional dialogue by Sam Taylor.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean,
it's not really true, but it's like an old Hollywood
it and it also sort of calls to the Barton Fink style, like bringing high intellectual writers from New York out to LA to do.
Well, which was based on Fitzgerald and Faulkner.
Yes.
And Clifford Odets.
And there's a scene where obviously Mark Twain is sitting on the couch, like waiting to meet with N.J. Gottlieb, and somebody calls him Dickens, and he makes like a cartoon frown.
But I think there's also a weird critique of commercialism here, and the sort of like the player style Hollywood bastardizes everything that's artistic and beautiful, but also the fact that it comes in the context of a Schrader film that is kind of cannibalizing noir films for nothing, I think is an accidental self-critique. And
also a Schrader film that he made in order to show movie executives that they should work with him. And
it's also, and then there's also another weird level to it, and this is what I found, and I wrote this down, is that he's trying to do these jokes about great literature being bastardized, but at the same time, this movie has character named after Lovecraft, and it also has... the character is much more prominent in the first film, but there's a character named Bradbury who's played by Charles Hallahan in the first film, and some nobody in this one. And
he's his buddy on the force. He used to be his partner, right?
Yeah, he shows up a couple times in this one, played by a nobody.
He's gotten a glow up though. Like he's kind of like a hunk in this one, and he's sort of a classic character actor type in the first one.
Yeah. Well, the first one is Charles Hallahan, who's also in The Thing.
Yes,
and Twilight's in the movie, among other films. But in this, it creates this weird thing. So I want to sort of segue into a discussion about Lovecraft in a second.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of Lovecraft in this one, but yeah.
No, there isn't. But I also want to say that if Mishima didn't exist, Lovecraft would be the ideal writer for Schrader to do a biopic.
Interesting.
Because he is such a Schrader character.
But did he leave his house, though? I get the sense he didn't really leave his house.
Well, he was just like, he was like a homebody in Massachusetts. But I'm saying that there's something about Lovecraft's just sheer isolation from the world. And his,
man in a room.
And the bizarre cosmology he created, and the weird racism, and
Ian's been demanding that he gets to say the name of Lovecraft's cat on microphone. I don't know what this is,
which is also
it's the N-word.
But
let's not go there.
To your point, Jack, it's true that Lovecraft also like came up with this kind of fun mythology that sometimes functioned as social critique. And then also just kind of enjoyed having it spread and sort of encourage other people to like integrate it into their works, because he just liked the idea that this would become like a mythos that existed beyond him.
Yeah, people like Robert E. Howard.
Right.
Yeah, and then later like Charles Band, like the kind of sort of Stuart Gordon, the kind of mildly unscrupulous direct-to-video behemoths who are being whose work I think is being drawn on by Cast a Deadly Spell, especially.
Pretty much, but I also think it's so at this point, you were talking about before he became annoyingly ubiquitous, Lovecraft was someone who was, I would say, decently known as a name I would say like maybe known as a name, but people were not overall aware of Cthulhu and Yog-Sothoth as concepts generally, unless you were a total dork who went to science fiction conventions. Right. And what rubs me the wrong way about using the real author, using the quote unquote classy authors, it's almost like Schrader is saying, like, well, you see, Shakespeare and Twain and Dickens are real authors, but Lovecraft and Bradbury are these, like, genre writers who aren't worthy of your, like, we're able to just do, like, riffs on them as characters.
That's interesting, yeah. I mean...
And I don't think that's what he's intending, but I think that's...
What do you think about Norma Desmond being real in this universe?
That's the type of stuff that just feels like cheap in a way that, you know, I don't know. I somewhat expect more, because we know that Schrader loves noir. I think we also know that he doesn't seem to give a shit about other genre fiction, as he said when he made Cat People. Seems like he thinks it's kind of silly.
Trash. Yeah.
But he kind of turns it all into the same stew here and just says, like, you know, isn't it just fun to engage with these ideas? I think there's an occasional point that he's making and some occasional artistry. I don't mean to make it sound like it's nothing to me, but it's few and far between.
Right. But I mean, it's, you know, in the first film, David Warner is revealed to be, he wants to summon an elder god. And in this one, it's just magic is real.
And he's doing it in a housing development built by Haitian zombies, which is kind of a statement about something. But
oh yeah, so we were back to we kind of talked around the whole the use of. So I think that like clearly the metaphor was supposed to stick around this time, but then it turns into this bizarre slapstick routine where Hopper knocks them sideways, and then we get this, like, the eyes bugging out felt like that feels like a bad racist bit from like a 1930s movie.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. I mean,
it's upsetting.
Oh, you know, it reminded me of like there's a part, I don't know what it's from originally, but there's a part. Have you ever seen Spike Lee's Bamboozled?
Yes. Yeah.
There's that end montage where he just has this, like, a bunch of clips of just horrifically racist
sure.
Yeah.
early Hollywood films, and there's a part where just, I don't know the name of the actor, but they draw, like, cartoon eyes over him to bug out as far as they can, and it's really ugly. And I feel like Schrader was just trying to go, like, oh, let's just throw in anything here. It'll be a cartoon bit. But
right.
There's already this metaphor about racism being placed over it. It's really toned down.
Well, let's talk about the use of blackness in the film, because I was doing a little research, and I think if anyone wants, like, an actual thorough discussion of this, I recommend checking out the book Black Scare, Red Scare, Charisse Burden-Stelly. This is a scholarly book about the combined fear of black nationalism and black involvement in radical left causes. That is, it's like an actual historical text and not a podcast episode about the film Witch Hunt. But so check that out. Yep. And then also, but, you know, needless to say, if you think that, like, white passing, German Jews in Hollywood had a hard time during the HUAC trials, imagine what black people had experienced during the same period. There's also the Broadcast 41, which is similar to the Hollywood 10, but this is a list of 41 women working in television and radio, which was more available to women at the time, who were also blacklisted for associations, real and perceived, with the left. And then I was reading about, we all know about the Salem witch trials, right? And various other witch trials in the early British colonies in the Americas, and how the witches were like little white girls who were burned to death, right? No, the white women were all hanged if they were killed. The burning at the stake only happened to black women, actually. Yeah. There's an article, this has been covered in a number of places, but there's an opinion piece from the Washington Post a couple of years ago discussing this that I'll link in the show notes. But, somehow they found a worse punishment than hanging, and they saved it for black women. Of course, if anyone's read The Crucible, about Tituba, who was an enslaved indigenous woman who was involved in whatever, presumably like goof around game in the woods, was misinterpreted as witchcraft, but who herself also, she's an indigenous woman from, no one's quite sure, but like the Caribbean. So shockingly, she didn't have like a strictly Puritan cosmology.
Yep.
And there's throughout American history, there's plenty of hostility and violence toward people who are practicing any kind of spiritual or cultural ritual that doesn't adhere to the Western Christian idea of how things should go.
And I think that Schrader, on some level, is trying to seriously deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, they dress Hippolyta up in like a...
She's like in her most traditional African-inspired garb when she's going to be burned. Yeah.
Right.
But it also exists in the context of this wacky movie full of bizarre comedy. This is a movie where a guy literally shrinks.
That was good.
Yeah, I mean, Gottlieb is the only guy who I think knows what movie he's in, so I respect the character and the actor to that extent. But you're right. And Jack, that also leads us to the eulogy at the funeral, which is like that's some of the most explicit joke making. Some of it made me laugh, but then also some of it is like, funny. He got really small as the priest.
I laughed out loud.
Me too.
Yeah, he gets downsized.
Yeah, he does get downsized.
Yeah, that was a good bit.
But you're right that Schrader seems to be wrestling with some of this. I mean, the fact that he brings in sort of the self-sabotage, which is like a common theme in the discussion of all these books about this period. I also revisited some of Philip Foner's stuff, and he talks about the National Negro Labor Council, which is amongst the only black groups that decided not to basically sort of like do their own purges, because there was this sense that if they wanted to survive, they had to like work with these people, but some of them recognize that in doing so, they're just setting themselves up for a future failure, right? Because you're creating the mechanism that'll be used against you inevitably. And in the film, we get, we haven't talked about them yet, but like Lipsinka.
Lipsinka, yes.
Who I think falls into the same category, right? As like a queer outsider who is maybe facilitating some of this stuff out of a sense of self-preservation. But the question becomes like, is that a good strategy?
I mean,
we gotta... there's 1,000 little subplots in this movie that could, but
I think so. Lipsinka is a drag character performed for decades now by drag artist John Epperson, who was also a full-time rehearsal pianist for the American Ballet Theater. And plays the pianist in Black Swan, presumably in reference to this. But Lipsinka was like a New York drag performer. It's very much inspired by sort of the classic screen dames of this period. Mm-hmm. And in this film, Lipsinka plays, what's the character's name?
Vivian Dart.
Oh, it's
Vivian Dart, who runs a brothel.
One of the most indulgent scenes of the film, right? Really.
Our friends over on IMDb in the plot keyword section. It's the first plot keyword on IMDb, H.P. Lovecraft. The second, breast growing.
Yes.
All the fetishists find each other.
Pre Bruce Almighty, we got some
exactly.
CGI
but
breast morphing.
I think, especially compared to, and this is in the Ennis house.
Yes.
Or maybe also there's another Frank Lloyd Wright house that's very similar in South Pasadena, and different sources will say that they shot at different ones. But
it's definitely there's definitely the exterior of the Ennis house.
But yeah, we're getting like Chopin Nocturne and Nina Simone, and this feels like closer to what the movie could have been, and then we get some of the worst stuff in the movie.
Well, but I do think that compared to the depiction of the trans character in the first film, which is I think it's pretty obviously a cisgendered man in costume and played as a gag. Here we have Lipsinka credited as Lipsinka.
Yep.
And it's never addressed that this is a queer performer, but there is obviously, this is a character who magically can make women glamorous and transform bodies.
And typically get them to fit like male desire, which is what she does for several characters.
And I think what given Schrader's dalliances in his films and in his personal life with queer subcultures, I think it's indicative of either a greater respect or at least a greater consideration of those kinds of people.
My guess is that Schrader probably saw a Lipsinka routine where she was lip syncing to. So I first became aware of Lip-Synca when I saw Morrissey when I saw him live playing a Lip-Synca video.
Oh, interesting.
Before he went on stage, where she was lip syncing to a Joan Crawford routine.
Yeah.
Clip from a movie.
She had like constant live shows where she did this type of stuff.
Right.
I believe. Yeah.
So I went on the Morrissey fan forum. I was like, "What was that?" And people were like, "Oh, that's Lip-Synca. That's the drag queen that Morrissey loves." So
Lip-Synca there's some special edition release of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane where Lip-Synca has a commentary track.
Yes, that's exactly right.
With another drag artist.
We should just. I mean, it's rather obvious. It's no surprise that there is an enormous queer love of old Hollywood and a lot of reclamation of these films that often were considered pretty bad at the time.
And not Witch Hunt. I don't think. Maybe in how many decades we have to get. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying I think that Schrader is giving a tip of the hat to the fact that a lot of the love for the movies that he loves. Yeah. A lot of the people who kept them alive were queer. And I think he is interested in that world. And I think it's interesting that there might have been an earlier version of the script that made things more explicit. But I think Schrader is content to keep it unanswered as to what Vivian Dart really is, because I don't think he thinks the answer matters that much.
Yeah, I mean,
everyone sees Vivian as a woman in the film.
Right.
I don't think anyone makes any. I didn't notice any weird comments about.
Right. These men who are patrons of the establishment don't make any jokes at Lip-Synca's expense. I did want to mention, by the way, relative to the black women and witch hunt conversation, if you're a white woman who has one of those T-shirts that say "We are the granddaughters of the witches you couldn't burn," you have to get rid of it. That's the official. The official Pod Casty For Me position is that T-shirt is cultural appropriation, in addition to being corny. So, yeah, fuck out of here.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the Lip-Synca aspect, I kept kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, and it never did, which I appreciated. And
this is the same year as Ace Ventura, so it's easy to imagine.
It's allowed at this point,
it's another
certainly.
detective film, when you think about it.
That's right.
Not a lot of people realize that.
It's in the title.
What?
Yeah, it's a sneaky addition.
Crazy.
Yeah. Do we have any other?
There's a lot to talk about here. I was going to say that, so I'm pretty sure that the whole the brothel that's transforming the women and the whole transforming the Hollywood actresses is a riff on the book L.A. Confidential, because the movie hadn't come out yet.
I was also thinking about this.
And so I think it's just sort of famously in that book and film, there's the
women getting cut to look like actresses.
Women getting cut to look like Hollywood actresses.
And in the movie, there's the joke where it's like, they made her look like Lana Turner. That is Lana Turner.
Yeah. Great scene. Spacey again.
Yeah.
There you go.
Great actor. Totally innocent.
Nope.
I was. It's funny when this is a classic kind of Hollywood only allowing extraordinarily good-looking people to be in movies situation, but there's the reveal that Lip-Synca has glammed up, the absolute dog Penelope Ann Miller, and to reveal this, they just they have her in
slightly less
makeup, still looking
like
a
the most
movie
beautiful
star.
person in any city of less than 100,000 people or something.
Right.
That was one of the two biggest unintentional laughs I had. The other was when she kisses Dennis Hopper at Union Station at the end, and you just realize they were supposed to be a love story.
Let's talk about Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper doesn't seem to know where he is in this movie. He really feels like he's doing all of the lines cold from cue cards.
I think sometimes he's doing interesting stuff, whether it's by virtue of being uninterested. He does seem, you're right, Jake, the word confused is so present in every scene of this film. But he has a read where, for example, he's in an early scene where he's talking to Hippolyta, and he says, "Who's that producer you're working for at Palisades?" And she says, "NJ Gottlieb." And he says, "That's what I thought." It's just a very weird.
He doesn't seem like he
doesn't seem like a guy who could ever solve a mystery.
He really doesn't seem like he has any deductive skills.
Well, and Fred Ward, I think, is well cast as a guy who, in a world of magic, would just react like, "Whoa." you know. That's,
and he's doing like a very light bogey kind of thing, and he has a bit of that edge to him. Whereas Hopper, I think I've expressed this on the show before. I don't like Dennis Hopper. I think
I'll defend.
Well, I just think that
for Blue Velvet, which is already out, I mean, I think he can be utilized. I think
the inherent evil of Dennis Hopper as a person is just it cannot be ignored, and I don't think it really contributes to, even in Blue Velvet, which I agree he's like effective in, but I still think it seems like this guy doesn't know the camera's on, and.
That's what I love about him. I love that he is this, like... Okay, so first of all, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool supporter of a lot of Boomer relics.
And you're a big Henry Hopper fan, too. You love the Gus Van Sant film Restless. One of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Judy Hopps.
Yes.
So, she's in Restless as well.
But I'm going to say, like... here's the thing. I love Dennis Hopper as an artist, as a filmmaker, as a creator. I think Easy Rider is every bit as good as the Boomers claimed it was. I think Out of the Blue is a masterpiece.
This is what I've heard. I have not seen.
I think he is a fascinating character. He's such a weird piece of New Hollywood, and I think he's so clearly representative of like that weird of like the kind of actors who were young doing movies in the 50s. He worked with James Dean twice, which is very rare to say with James Dean only.
I mean, we get I Died 1,000 Times and The Big Combo, and Hopper's in I Died 1,000 Times. So the film knows that he has sort of like been threaded throughout Hollywood history in a very strange way.
And I think there's an enormous number of great Dennis Hopper performances. Night Tide, River's Edge, Speed. He's fantastic. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Red Rock West, The American Friend, Apocalypse Now.
The American Friend is an all-time movie for me, so I agree with you. I think
Rumblefish is one of my favorite movies.
I think these movies work despite Hopper. At this point, I might just have like an allergy to him, and I just get pissed off when I see him.
I think you might, because I'm going to agree with Jack that I think that those films are built to some degree around Hopper sometimes, and I think that only makes sense.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
I hate Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I despise that film.
Oh my god, what a disgusting opinion. It's a great movie.
That movie was written on the bus on the way to school. That is what that movie feels like.
It's a movie that's constantly, again, that is another movie that is constantly changing its tone every 5 minutes.
I noticed that as well. I think that's bad.
Yeah. No, but when Hooper does it, I'm a big Hooper fan. But I will also say Hooper and Hopper
Hooper.
Forever.
But I don't know. I don't understand not loving Dennis Hopper as an actor or a director. I don't understand. Like, here's the thing. Like, when you watch him in a truly bad movie like Super Mario Brothers, he's still really compelling in his strangeness.
He's deeply. People have made this observation. This is not original on my part, but there's a Trumpness to him and his sort of like slightly off key reaction to everything, where it is sort of impossible not be charmed but be fascinated by, because it's I
even dislike his episode of Fishing with John.
Wow,
really?
That's how much I don't like Dennis Hopper.
I think there must be something about him that just rubs you the wrong way.
Yeah, he hit me with his car. That was, I think, a big part.
I don't. Yeah, like I've always. You don't like him, but you don't like him in Apocalypse Now as just like this weird.
No, I mean he's fine. It's just that part is sort of laughable, and that's the one where it really feels like he didn't have a script. Like they just said, Dennis, just say some of the stuff you think is real.
But I think that's
if you watch Hearts of Darkness, that's pretty much what happens.
Which I think is good. I think that's the right way to use him, because I agree with you. One of the reasons Humphrey Bogart is so effective, among others, is because he can be sort of like quietly nasty for an entire film, where you're like, I guess I like Philip Marlowe, but is he a piece of shit? Like, is he just like a bad guy to be around?
Right. But I think Hopper doesn't seem like he doesn't
have the other side for sure.
Giving a performance in
Hopper,
this.
No, I think he is. I think he's like Ralph. I think he's doing Ralph Meeker in Kiss Me Deadly.
Right.
I think he is sometimes doing it. I'm gonna find a point halfway between you guys.
I think Kiss Me Deadly is one of those films that works thanks to its shoddiness and thanks to its low budgetness, and this film just doesn't.
Well, Kiss Me Kiss Me Deadly is better than Witch Hunt.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's arguing otherwise.
I think we can probably agree with that. Speaking of Bogart, just an interesting bit of trivia for this podcast. Richard Van Stone, who played Phil Duncan, the Bogart stand-in in White Hunter Black Heart, also plays Bogart in the 2000 film One of the Hollywood 10, starring Jeff Goldblum as Herbert Bieberman, which is about the HUAC earrings. Isn't that mildly interesting?
That is. We also didn't talk about Cheryl Lee Ralph, who is, of course, in several films that we've mentioned on this podcast. Well, she was in Jefferson's and Good Times, which I assume maybe our friend Paul Schrader was aware of since he's engaged with those works. But she's also in To Sleep with Anger, the great Charles Burnett film.
Great movie.
She's in the Mighty Quinn.
You beat me to my wearing a Mighty Quinn style shirt. Yeah, she's in the
Flintstones.
I'm wearing a sheriff's uniform. That's what he means.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
She's. I first became aware. She does a voice in a movie that I watched way too many times as a child. Oliver and Company.
Sure.
Who is she? She's the shopping cart. Is that Oliver and Company?
No, she's the.
She plays the brave little toaster. She's in that film.
She's the. No, she has a very dumb song with like Bob Fosse inspired choreography called Streets of Gold. But,
okay.
I really. Is there something? Are we going to talk about
BioShock
the video
2?
Where she talked
that she was the voice of Grace Holloway?
We're not going to talk about BioShock 2. Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
No, are we going to talk about the video where she's being interviewed on the red carpet and she's about the actor who gave her really strong advice in her career, and she's saying that Robert De Niro was like so kind to her. And so, you aware of this?
No, I don't know about this.
Okay, so I found it. So Cheryl Lee Ralph is she got an Emmy nomination for Abbott Elementary. And she's right there on the red carpet, and she says that one day I was shooting with Robert De Niro, and in between shots, he looked at me and said, "You are great." He said, "You're really DGA, damn great actress. But Hollywood's not looking for you. They're not looking for black girls. So you better wave that red flag, let them know you're here, because you deserve to be seen." And like this went around, and people were like, "Oh, this is really inspirational." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's. I mean, yeah, that's cool that he was doing that, but it's also like." We all know what Robert De Niro's sexual proclivities are.
Robert De Niro has dated a number of black women, so I think
he was flirting with you. Like that's like,
both can be true. Both can be possible.
Yeah, I'm
sympathetic to anybody having been in one of these circumstances myself, where somebody compliments you on your work and then also maybe turns out to be hitting on you later, and it sucks because you immediately question whether they actually valued your work. But
that's why whenever I'm about to compliment someone on their work, I say you're an absolute pig. You look like shit, and I want.
And
you
now,
look like Penelope. You look like Penelope Miller. Before
you want me to?
You
make me feel like I should. You make me want to castrate myself. But I love
your work is
your
impeccable.
Poetry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about. As long as we're talking about actors, I think she's pretty. I think Cheryl Lee Ralph's pretty good here. She doesn't.
Solid.
She's much more of a character than the woman who's feel bad. That
now I'm not sure I agree. You're saying that she doesn't have as much of a presence as the original Kropotkin?
I think
no. It says she has much more.
I think they are roughly equivalent performances to me, but she has more to do in this movie.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
We have hit 104 unedited minutes here, so we do need to be judicious.
All right, let's be.
Do you have?
We'll talk.
Yeah. Do you have any?
We did talk about Eric Bogosian.
I was going to ask if you guys think that Eric Bogosian in 1951 or whatever would be considered white, even. Like, are Armenians allowed to be?
Great question. Yeah,
I think he's white passing.
Sure. And he's terrific. But it did occur to me that like. This guy couldn't get elected, and
I wondered if the people behind Succession had seen Witch Hunt, which is why he's cast in like a similar role.
I had the exact same thought. That it's exactly like
some HBO producer was like, "Wait a second, I remember something." I think he does fine until a scene that simply no actor could succeed in, and is. One of the most like high school theaters
where he turns into Snake from The Simpsons.
Well, he's but here's the thing: is that okay?
Schrader rewrote that part, by the way. He added that part.
Yes, he rewrote the ending. He calls it. He like hangs his hat on it in the interview. Yeah.
Okay, so 100%. Obviously, this was rewritten. Second, I will say that what he's clearly trying to do, and it's the same thing he does with Lip Synca, where he's like, we're going to do what you do, which is have you lip sync to Nina Simone and go through that. He's like, I cast Eric Bogosian, and Eric Bogosian at the time was famous for doing one-man shows where he would just like stand wearing all black and just basically
he was a monologist.
Yes,
he was a monologist. He was also a playwright,
Mr. Talk Radio, Mr. Suburbia.
Right.
Yep.
Terrific actor. I got a book of his right here. Essential Bogosian, full of his monologues. And so he's like, I know what we can do. We can use, and this is the point where the movie just like, it's clear that Schrader did not, and I'm not saying he has to have a quote unquote a magic system like the Brandon Sanderson bullshit, but he clearly had no idea of what the limits of this magic are and what it's supposed to do, because all of a sudden he splits himself in two.
Well, yeah, he basically gives himself a Twin Peaks The Return style, like evil Dale Cooper doppelganger.
A Tulpa.
Yes.
And,
but the Tulpa then becomes like Bill Hicks.
Well, it's Bogosian. That's Bogosian was like Bill Hicks, like Terrence McKenna, one of those guys who would do these sorts of rants on stage. And Bogosian is very known for being left wing, known for his politics, and known for. So he starts like giving this rant about how there's going to be wars in countries you've never heard of. I assume he's talking about
Vietnam War.
I think
he's talking. I think he's specifically referring to the Bosnia that was going on around that time. Because that wouldn't, I don't know if Bosnia existed as a separate country
from Yugoslavia. Yeah, I mean, there's that, but then I think one of the things that was funniest to me as like example of the decay of culture is he mentions the designated hitter.
He does,
which came about in 1973, and I love the idea that Schrader either thinks or has spoken to someone who thinks that the designated hitter is like some harbinger of the end of Western society.
I think that might be a Bogosian thing. I think that might just be like,
sure.
I don't know.
I think to your point, Jack, there's a sense of like in doing HUAC, which again, I don't know if Schrader is totally seriously engaging in, but you don't know what worlds you've condemned the United States to, right? You assumed that you were doing some type of cleanse, and I think the film is effective in also saying that the purpose of the communist purges of the Second Red Scare were totally different for like everybody involved, right? It served like one function for local councils, one function for the senators trying to make a name for themselves. Yeah. Other people just like had personal feuds that they were trying to play out, you know. I think the film does a pretty good job
in early America. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Right. But I think it's also hard to take seriously because he's doing like a hunchback for the whole thing also. I don't know what's happening on screen when he's giving the speech.
It's really bizarre. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in anything other than
the staging of it. They're in this like outdoor amphitheater, and the way that, I mean, it's obviously invoking like lynching imagery in an upsetting way, but at the same time, because of the outdoor amphitheater, it reminded me so much of the Nathan For You Claw of Shame, where he's rigged up on he's strung up, and a robotic arm is going to pull his pants down in front of a.
It's by the way, it's shot at the Ford Amphitheater.
Ford Amphitheater. Okay, yeah. But he's gonna, a robotic arm is going to indecently expose him to children unless he can escape from handcuffs in time, and there's a police officer standing by to arrest him.
Yeah.
That is. But I guess I don't know. Like Bogosian probably gives the best performance here, I would say, because he seems to be, apart from that last scene that nobody could ever deal with, he seems to be like really. He seems to be the only one who's like playing it completely straight. He's not making jokes.
Yeah, and he can like grandstand for the cameras and then do kind of self-serving and sleazy behind, like backstage. So
there's a kind of magic deep fake that happens also. That's weird.
Oh yeah, that's weird. That's very Phantom of the Paradise-esque, where Julian Sands is like showing like what.
I liked this part a lot.
That was cool.
I will say this. Speaking of Badalamenti, this felt like something from 90s Lynch, and I thought this was very cool. And then it's immediately followed by like Darth Marenghi Dark Place, Garth Marenghi Dark Place style effects.
I mean, did you say Darth Marenghi Dark Place?
I did.
That actually rules so much. Can we leave it in?
Darth Marenghi is no longer canon, but post
right.
Disney.
They changed Darth Marenghi's birthday because
universe.
of woke. Yeah.
But I was gonna. The Julian Sands stuff. It's weird because we didn't even get into how like in the first movie Lovecraft just doesn't like magic, and in this one he's given a traumatic backstory.
Yeah, magic dropped the piano on his brother.
It seeks out that's exactly right. It's seeking out these noir trappings sometimes for like legitimacy somehow. I mean, Schrader took the chance to like reshoot part of I Died 1,000 Times. I don't know. To what extent is this just like a fun exercise for him? I'm not sure.
They repeat the business card joke, the wrong business card joke from the first film, but it's not as funny here.
It's a good bit in the first movie.
It is. And you know what's a really good bit is the tiny chalk outline in this film. I mean, that's very funny.
Pretty much, and him getting eaten by the Dobermans. That was a genuinely funny scene.
Marie Prevost or whatever her name is from the Nick Lowe song. Yeah.
Marie Prevost.
I did want to just mention there's Schrader kind of anticipates something because there's an idea in this film that celebrities are using the magic to make themselves beautiful and glamorous. Mm-hmm. And I guess the parallel there would be the idea that celebrities are using communism to make themselves beautiful and glamorous, which is basically a QAnon. Like that is a current paranoid thought, not a 50s paranoid thought, which is interesting to me.
It's a very confused metaphor. The same way in Buffy, Willow's magic went from being like a lesbian metaphor to a drug addiction metaphor.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it just becomes whatever he wants to do.
The ultimate drug. A lot of people are saying this.
Yeah, because sometimes you're getting like the classic HUAC challenge, like Lillian Hellman on the stand. Like, is she going to stand up for the people she knows, or is she going to, sort of fold or whatever? But then sometimes you're right; it's about cheating the American public or something, tricking them.
It's about being deceitful.
Yeah.
There's bad, and then it's also really confusing because the part that just doesn't make any sense. I was mentioning earlier is that like I guess Sands is secretly working for Bogosian, but then Bogosian has him arrested anyway,
right?
But also doesn't seem to have the part that just seemed weird to me is that like this is a movie that's all about trying to regulate magic, but he then arrests this evil warlock.
Yeah, like how fucking stupid are you?
The guy, by the way, Julian Sands, who played, it's clearly just because he played the warlock
in the film Warlock. Yeah, I haven't seen those movies.
Warlock's fun.
It is fun. Yeah,
it's basically just Terminator plus Highlander.
I wish I could put a lock on War.
We all do.
We all. Okay, Bogosian. But like, there's something. Yeah, it's just bizarre that he just has him arrested, and then it's just like, gee, I wonder if the warlock is going to use.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to get mad about this and do anything. Yeah, they don't have a special anti-magic handcuff technology or whatever.
Feels like just the easiest thing you write in there. Like if there's cops who are going after magic, then there should be something.
Right, the Halo from Minority Report or something.
Uh-huh. Julian Sands generally given some of the worst monologues in this film. But
luckily, you can't always tell what he's saying. So, which is
I did kind of like when he was like speaking through the bottle.
Sure. Yeah.
That was nifty. But then let's talk about that weird deep fake. But he shows the footage that I guess is like.
Yep.
He's able to like this idea was interesting to me because it's almost. Not only deepfake, it's like he's making these AI in front of you.
Right.
Video flashbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds of like Blowout or
Fan of the Paradise when he's watching
Wag the Dog.
Watching the video.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But it's also, I was saying, like, that's what feels very DePaul. I'm thinking of the scene in Fan of the Paradise where, like, Winslow finds that, like, video that manages to have several different angles, like the tape that has several different angles.
Yep.
And it's happening right in front of him. And it's just this weird stylistic. It also, something similar happens in everyone's favorite Japanese horror film, House.
Yeah.
Where they open a book and it just takes them into a film.
That's fun.
It's just like these weird, like, breakings of reality in the visual space. That is the part where I think Schrader is. It's not very Schrader-esque, but it's a very cool moment.
I agree on both accounts.
I wish the movie had played with this more. but it also exists in this bizarre world where people get shrunken and turned into mannequins.
And eaten by dogs, and then their corpses are carried out in a lunchbox.
Yes, that's right.
That was okay. That was also extremely funny, and the tiny little coffin.
So the thing that Schrader is actually trying to get off the ground at this time,
Witch Hunt 2,
is Witch Who's Hunting Now is what it's called.
City Hall.
It's City Hall, which is a film that he co-writes or maybe rewrites, and that ends up getting directed by Harold Becker. Yeah, and is the next film that we will be covering in order on this show.
That's right.
But he had a deal to direct it, he says, but couldn't get a star attached. And he says, the studios, with the exception of special effects films and children's pictures, are simply in the job of catering to the major stars at this point. And so I think it's interesting that first of all, he also says that the executives associate me with the D word, which is the current curse word, dark. Which, and
I thought you were going to say director.
It's difficult. What's very funny is that in order to combat this idea, he makes a movie, a literal film noir, inspired by partially the Cthulhu mythos and partially the HUAC hearings.
Right.
I mean, I know it's a comedy, but that's dark.
But it's also like David Fincher has 7 around the same time. It's not like people weren't going to see dark movies.
Right. I mean, Dark City. That's later.
One of the
darkest. Yes, it's great.
Dark City is probably my favorite, besides Roger Rabbit, mixing of noir and another genre.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But
I'm a big Happy Time Murders guy. It's not true.
Yeah, you're the one. You're the one. Happy Time.
There's another quote in the LA Times article where he talks about how people aren't interested, or maybe the existential hero is no longer useful, and he sort of says like light sleeper style characters that are engaging with their own ideas and their own perspectives on the world are sort of not relevant or not helpful anymore.
I mean, this is a very postmodern,
that's
90s kind of.
Have you read Ebert's review of Bringing Out the Dead? Because he begins with a basic quote of Schrader basically saying that, or a variant of that, and it's interesting because Ebert's trying to say Bringing Out the Dead is the movie that and Ebert loved this movie. He's one of the few critics who did, and he said that this is a movie that completely exists without irony, and he compares it to a movie that Ebert famously hated, Fight Club. And he says that Fight Club is just this pure ironic snark, and Bringing Out the Dead is something beautiful and from the heart. And Scorsese and Schrader have delivered this, and I think
interesting. And that's describing the film Witch Hunt, you said?
Of course, yes. Ebert's but don't worry, Bring Out the Dead, don't worry about that, just see Witch Hunt. And then, this is this is a weird detour that did not pay off the way I think anyone intended it to.
Right. I mean, I think Schrader attributes this to his having moved to the suburbs and having kids now. And I actually think it's kind of beautiful to imagine that Schrader has, for at least a moment, been forced out of his own head by something happening in his life. I think that's something we can all aspire to. But it's funny to attribute that personal growth or personal shift to a artistic historical shift away from people being interested in these things. And I think, like you're saying, his belief that people don't want dark films. I think sometimes people just confuse what is happening to them with some type of
what's happening to everyone. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's too bad we never got a Schrader children's movie.
It's true. A Babe.
Yeah, exactly. Or the Hugo, I guess, would be the other.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. Does he ever try an overt comedy ever again?
Touch, I think, is a comedy. And then he's also written a number of comedies that haven't been produced, and including I believe he wrote a play called Berlinale that's set at the Berlinale.
Yeah, it's a critique of critics and artists and their interactions.
Yes. Haven't read it yet. Yeah. We'll get to it.
Yep.
He's not... I mean, there's funny moments in his movies, but I don't think of him as particularly adept with jokes.
Yeah, not particularly. See some of his recent Facebook posts. For example, the one about the Palestinian dog whistle.
Yeah,
that one's not good.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this for plenty.
Right.
We got to bring this Chrysler into the
massive
police impound
gas
lot.
guzzling, polluting Chrysler. Yeah. All right. My only final thoughts are that I think the film is at its best when it's either trying to commit to some of the same stuff that Cast a Deadly Spell did better, or it is attempting to struggle with this idea that, you know, these HUAC style investigations affect like the little people more than they affect big name actors.
And Jay Gottlieb, you mean?
Right.
Little people.
The littlest person of all. Yeah.
I think so. And I think there's an interesting film to be made from this metaphor, and this movie doesn't quite get there. And also, I did want to say that my famous podcast girlfriend very astutely identified some of the music, I believe, in the opening montage as royalty-free library music that also appears on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I also wrote, I'm looking at some of my notes here. I wrote, there's an In-N-Out cup visible.
Yeah, I noted the In-N-Out cup at the drive-in. Yeah. I did kind of like how they seem to have magicked the drive-in screen so that the bullet came out of the screen at them. That was cool.
Roger Rabbit element as well. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah.
I wrote an exchange. I think is pretty good noir dialogue here. I just wanted to be happy. They got pills for that now.
Yeah, that's a very noir type of deal. Yeah.
I wrote up a line. I just wrote down lines that stuck out to me. Whip up some of that mojo hoodoo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ian's saying that to me a lot.
Wishing herself into a D cup and her big break is a good line. If God doesn't destroy Hollywood, he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. That's a good devotion.
I had an idea for a character as a private eye named H. Philip Brown Sauce. Is that anything?
I wrote there's a really stupid scene where he's waiting outside the brothel, and I guess one of the guards is making an umbrella float or something. What was he like?
Yeah, I think there's little people doing kind of like parlor tricks throughout.
They do, yes.
Yeah, yep. It's really dumb. It's really like low rent magic.
Imagine if you had to rent magic.
Okay, all right.
Rent's going these days.
Well, I mean, in the context, you would have to rent a practitioner.
We have one last thing we have to do before we close up shop here, and that is, of course, the sexual obsession check-in. Paul Schrader recently discussing his latest or his next film, Non Compos Mentis. He had this to say.
I've never written a script about sexual obsession, and so that's what I'm doing now.
And we here on the show are going through and trying to determine which films he's written that are not about sexual obsession. Now, he is not a credited writer on this film, but he is openly admits that he rewrote large chunks of it. Do we think that this film is about sexual obsession? I will say no.
It's about, he's definitely interested in boobs growing bigger.
That is true. That's actually a major point that you've made there. And also,
I would say it's horny, but it's not
right.
Obsessed.
Holding ladies underwater for some kind of sexual
the femme fatale
gratification.
That kind of gets at the end that turns out to be fine mostly.
Right. And like a lady turning into a mannequin, there seems like that could be a big thing for somebody.
Yeah, sure.
The lip, I would say that the most there's definitely something going on with the lip sync thing where I think he's, but I would say not really about sexual obsession, but it's definitely. I also we should note that I think the very first scene of the movie he quotes his own script, A Taxi Driver.
What does he say?
What does he say?
He says something like, I think he says, "You talking to me?" or something.
Oh, yeah, he does say that. I noted that as well. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like,
that's funny.
That's clearly a Schrader rewrite, and he's clearly thinking do you think he thought this was on the level of Taxi Driver, or do you think he was
I don't think he's.
I do actually have to say that I am personally sexually obsessed with L.A. native Shakespeare, who we see briefly in the witch trial at the end.
Yep.
Okay, that's actually pretty great because we keep seeing him because he keeps on having some over the shoulder shots of Cheryl Lee Ralph, and you just see the crowd behind her, and Shakespeare's always just there.
Shakespeare in a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses. Love that guy.
Yeah, he did not dress appropriately for the hearing.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. Right. My answer is no.
Thank you. I was gonna ask Ian if your answer was no. All right, that is more than enough about the 1994 film Witch Hunt. Thank you, Jack, for for joining us for this this curio once again.
Yes, extremely generous of you to give your time for this.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. I hope you'll have me back for whichever director you do next. I'll dig up some garbage TV.
We did. Let's see. Who directed Casper and Wendy? Casper meets Wendy. Excuse me. Yeah, when we cover Sean McNamara, director of
Reagan.
The Even Stevens movie. Oh, is he directing the new Reagan film? He is.
Yes.
Wow.
Whoa.
And Cats and Dogs 3: Paws Unite.
If by new Reagan movie, you mean the movie that's been sitting on the shelf for many years.
Into the Blue 2, The Reef. All right, so Jack, you mentioned that you have a Substack that's coming out soon. Where else can people find your work?
I'm taking a Twitter break right now. I'll just give a
Why?
link to what's there.
I'm kidding.
I don't know.
You should.
Unpleasant.
It's a bad website for bad feelings to.
Right now, you can find me only if you reach out to me or I reach out to you. I'm also ignoring Discord because people on Discord just talk about Twitter all day. What people are talking about on Twitter, and I'm like, I just want to be free of the discourse in any way, shape, or form.
It's beautiful.
So you're touching grass.
I work on my own writing.
Yep.
I work on my own writing, and I'm a big I dig. I'll just keep watching movies by Paul Schrader or otherwise. I'm going to give you a confession.
Please.
I've never seen Autofocus, so I'm going to watch that.
Right, there you go.
I'm going to watch that for the first time when you guys cover it.
Nice. Same here. Never seen it. Excited.
All right. Okay. I thought you.
I think I saw this movie before I saw Blue Collar. Like, I think this is maybe the second Paul Schrader film I ever saw.
Oh, God. Okay, so I saw Blue Collar for the first time at the now poorly maintained Castro Theater in San Francisco. And it was my first time ever seeing it on a gorgeous 35mm print. And when it was over, I turned around and Jello Biafra was there.
Whoa, cool.
And I asked him what he thought of the movie. He said he'd also seen it for the first time. And it was just like, man, that Richard Pryor was crazy. Cool. And I asked him, did you ever meet him? And he was like, no, I wanted to, but I never was able. But he liked it, yeah.
Well, we'll all meet Richard Pryor soon when we receive our heavenly reward.
Someday.
Holiday in Bogosian? Is that anything?
You could do that next. But anyway, so Jello Biafra, fan of at least one Paul Schrader movie.
Great.
All right.
We'll get him on
the record.
We'll get him on the show. It seems like he was also involved with a band called Brujeria, which fits with
Jello Biafra was? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or he maybe produced their albums or something. Anyway, enough of this bullshit. If you like the show, remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review. It helps us on the algorithm. If you tell a friend, tell your dad, summon Shakespeare, tell him about it. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pod Casty For Me. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a 2-person Paul Schrader podcast, you can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. You can also find our all of this at podcastyforme.com, patreon.com/podcastyforme. Lots of crazy stuff going on. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork, and I think for helping Henry Hopper at the video store.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, said he was normal, which shocking. Anyway, come back next week for City Hall, the other most anticipated Paul Schrader film. And with that, bye.
Bye.